October 12, 1943. Somewhere along a frozen dirt road west of Smolensk, Soviet Union. The engines arrive before the trucks do. A distant mechanical rumble rolls through the gray morning fog like thunder trapped beneath the earth. Red Army infantrymen huddled beside a line of snow-covered birch trees lift their heads at the sound. For a moment, no one speaks. Then the first truck appears. Its headlights glow faintly through the mist. The vehicle lumbers forward, heavy tires grinding into the frozen mud. Behind it, another truck, then another, and another. Soon the narrow road is filled with them. Dozens, hundreds. Young Private Ivan Petrov, his rifle slung across his shoulder, squints at the unfamiliar shape of the vehicles. They look different from the battered Soviet trucks he's used to seeing, bigger, taller, stronger. Their engines growl with a deep, confident rhythm. Painted on the side of the lead vehicle are strange English letters. Studebaker. Ivan nudges the older soldier beside him. Where are these coming from? The man exhales smoke from a hand-rolled cigarette and watches the convoy pass. America, he mutters. For a long moment, the two soldiers simply stare. Truck after truck rolls past them, wheels throwing frozen mud into the air. Canvas-covered cargo beds stretch back along the road like an endless steel snake disappearing into the fog. Inside the cab of one vehicle, a Soviet driver leans out the window, shouting over the engine noise. Move aside. More coming. The soldiers step back as the convoy continues forward toward the front lines. But it doesn't stop. 10 minutes pass. 20. Still the trucks keep coming. The Red Army soldiers begin to exchange confused glances. Where did they get so many? Someone whispers. No one has an answer. Only 2 years earlier, the situation had looked very different. In June 1941, Adolf Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion in human history. 3 million German soldiers smashed across the Soviet border, supported by thousands of tanks and aircraft. Within weeks, Soviet defenses collapsed. Entire Red Army divisions were surrounded and destroyed. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers marched into German captivity. And the Soviet Union lost something even more devastating than territory. It lost its factories. The industrial heart of the Soviet Union lay in the western regions, now falling under German control. Cities like Kiev, Kharkov, and Minsk, centers of manufacturing, were suddenly on the front line. If those factories fell intact into German hands, the war might end quickly. So Soviet leader Joseph Stalin made a desperate decision. Take the factories and move them. Entire industrial plants were dismantled piece by piece. Machines, steel presses, turbines, assembly lines, everything that could be carried, was loaded onto trains and sent east. Thousands of rail cars creaked across the endless Soviet landscape toward the Ural Mountains and Siberia. Workers followed the machines. Engineers, families, children. Some factories restarted production in freezing open fields before their buildings were even finished. It was one of the greatest industrial evacuations in history. But even as the Soviet Union rebuilt its industry beyond German reach, another problem remained. A massive one. The Red Army had millions of soldiers, but almost no way to move them. By 1942, Soviet offensives often moved on foot. Infantry marched for days across mud roads and frozen fields. Artillery had to be pulled by exhausted horses. Supplies crawled toward the front line at walking speed. German forces noticed the difference immediately. The Wehrmacht was far from perfect, but it possessed thousands of trucks and transport vehicles. German infantry divisions could shift quickly along the front. The Red Army could not. Mobility, modern warfare's most important weapon, was missing. And without it, Soviet victories became painfully slow and costly. Commanders knew the problem well. Among them was Marshal Georgy Zhukov, the brilliant strategist who had already helped save Moscow from German capture. Zhukov understood something fundamental. Winning battles required more than tanks and soldiers. It required movement. Armies that could move faster could concentrate power where the enemy was weakest. But Soviet factories were already stretched to their limits, producing tanks, artillery, and ammunition. building hundreds of thousands of trucks? Impossible, at least for now. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away across the Atlantic Ocean, American factories were roaring to life. The United States had entered the war after the attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. President Franklin D. Roosevelt ordered American industry to transform into what he called the arsenal of democracy. Factories that once built refrigerators and automobiles now produce tanks, aircraft, and trucks around the clock. Among the companies answering that call was an American manufacturer few Soviet soldiers had ever heard of: Studebaker. Before the war, Studebaker was known for building civilian cars. But by 1942, its factories were producing a rugged military transport vehicle designed for rough terrain and heavy loads. The Studebaker US6. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't heavily armored. But it was powerful, reliable, and capable of carrying massive cargo across terrible roads. Exactly what the Red Army needed. Soon, thousands of these trucks began leaving American factories. But they were not staying in America. They were heading east, across oceans, across deserts, across some of the most dangerous supply routes of the entire war. Back on the muddy road near Smolensk, the convoy finally begins to slow. Private Ivan Petrov steps closer to one of the vehicles as it idles beside him. The driver leans out the window. "First time seeing one?" he asks. Ivan nods. The driver pats the metal door proudly. American truck. Runs like a bear. Ivan runs his hand across the cold steel of the vehicle. The engine hums steadily beneath the hood. It feels powerful, reliable, like something built to keep moving no matter what. He looks down the road again. More trucks are still arriving. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. For the first time since the war began, something strange begins to spread among the exhausted Soviet soldiers watching the convoy. Hope. Because if these trucks keep coming, the Red Army might finally be able to move as fast as the war demands. And when that happens, everything on the Eastern Front could change. But the soldiers standing beside that road don't yet know the full truth. They haven't seen the oceans these trucks crossed. They haven't seen the convoys hunted by German submarines. They haven't seen the Arctic storms tearing ships apart in frozen seas. The trucks arriving here have already survived a journey almost as dangerous as the battlefield itself. And the story of how they got here is even more unbelievable. March 3rd, 1943, North Atlantic Ocean, midnight. The sea is black, not dark, not gray, black, like an endless void swallowing everything beyond the narrow beam of a ship's searchlight. Ice sprays across the deck as waves slam against the steel hull of the American cargo ship SS John Erickson. Above, the wind howls like an animal. Sailors move carefully across the frozen deck, boots scraping against layers of ice. One wrong step out here could mean sliding overboard, disappearing into water, so cold a man would die in minutes. Inside the cargo holds beneath their feet sit hundreds of wooden crates. Each crate contains pieces of something the Soviet Union desperately needs. Trucks. American-built Studebaker US6 transport vehicles, disassembled and packed tight for the long journey east. But tonight, the ocean isn't their greatest threat. It's what's beneath it. Deep below the surface, somewhere in the freezing black water, a German submarine glides silently. Inside the cramped steel hull of U-255, Captain Lieutenant Reinhard Ricci leans over a chart table lit by a single red lamp. His finger traces the position of the convoy moving slowly across the Arctic waters. This isn't just any convoy. German intelligence knows exactly what these ships are carrying: weapons, fuel, trucks, supplies destined for the Red Army. If those supplies reach the Soviet Union, they will strengthen the enemy fighting Germany on the Eastern Front. Ricci speaks quietly. Range. A sonar operator listens to the faint rhythmic thrum of engines through headphones. 3,000 meters. Multiple targets. The convoy is large. Nearly 30 merchant ships moving slowly through the icy sea, escorted by British destroyers and corvettes weaving protective patterns around them. But even escorts cannot see everything in the darkness. Ricci gives the order. Prepare torpedoes. Metal doors slide open inside the submarine's torpedo room. Sailors move quickly in the cramped space, loading long steel weapons into the tubes. Above them, the convoy plows forward through the Arctic storm. Unaware, these Arctic convoys are among the most dangerous missions of the entire war. Their destination is the Soviet port city of Murmansk, far north near the Arctic Circle. It's one of the few ports that remains open year-round, even during the brutal winter. From there, the cargo will travel south into the Soviet Union. But the journey to Murmansk is deadly. Ships must sail through waters patrolled constantly by German submarines, aircraft, and warships based in occupied Norway. The convoys face everything: U-boat wolfpacks, Luftwaffe bombers, Arctic storms capable of snapping ships apart like toys. Some convoys suffered devastating losses. In July 1942, the infamous convoy PQ-17 was scattered after reports of a German battleship approaching. Without protection, German submarines and aircraft hunted the ships one by one. 24 merchant vessels were sunk. Thousands of tons of equipment vanished beneath the Arctic waves. But despite the danger, the convoys never stop, because the cargo inside them is simply too important. Back aboard the SS John Ericsson, a lookout suddenly shouts from the mast, "Wake in the water!" A streak of white foam cuts through the Black Ocean. A torpedo. The alarm bell explodes into life across the convoy. Men scramble across the decks. Engines roar as ships attempt to turn away. But torpedoes move faster than cargo vessels. Seconds later, a violent explosion rips through the night. A merchant ship near the center of the convoy erupts in a towering column of flame and water. Its hull splits open like a cracked egg. Sailors are thrown into the freezing sea. The convoy begins firing wildly into the darkness, escorts dropping depth charges that explode beneath the surface with thunderous force. The ocean boils with shock waves. Inside U-255, the submarine shudders as explosions ripple through the water around it. A crewman grips a pipe overhead. Depth charges. He stays calm. Hold course. Another explosion rattles the hull. The submarine dives deeper. Above them, the convoy continues forward, wounded but moving. Because it must. Over the course of the war, the United States sends enormous quantities of equipment to the Soviet Union under a program called Lend-Lease. Tanks, aircraft, fuel, food, railway equipment, and perhaps most importantly, trucks. More than 400,000 trucks will eventually arrive in Soviet hands. Many of them are Studebaker US6 vehicles, built in American factories, driven across American highways, loaded onto ships, then sent into some of the most dangerous waters in the world. Each truck that reaches Murmansk or the Persian Gulf route represents a victory over the ocean, the enemy, and the brutal Arctic weather. And once the trucks arrive, their real journey begins. Months later, those same vehicles roll across the Soviet landscape. Drivers quickly discover something remarkable. The Studebaker US6 can handle terrain that destroys many other trucks. Mud, snow, ice, deep ruts carved by tanks and artillery. Its powerful 6-cylinder Hercules engine pulls heavy loads without complaint. Its wide wheels grip roads that turn into rivers of mud during the infamous Russian Rasputitsa season. Soviet mechanics admire its reliability. One driver jokes that the truck can survive anything except running out of fuel. Soon the vehicles become everywhere. They haul artillery. They transport infantry. They tow rocket launchers. Entire Red Army supply lines begin running on American-built wheels. And the soldiers watching those endless convoys near Smolensk, they are only seeing the beginning. Because within months, these trucks will do far more than move supplies. They will help power one of the largest military offensives in human history. An operation so massive that it will shatter the German army on the Eastern Front. And when that moment comes, thousands of Studebaker trucks will be at the heart of it, racing forward across the battlefield, carrying the Red Army toward a turning point that even Adolf Hitler never expected. February 2nd, 1944. A frozen field outside Vitebsk, Soviet Union. Snow crunches beneath heavy boots as a column of Red Army soldiers marches along a narrow forest road. The wind cuts across the open fields, carrying the distant rumble of artillery from the front. Then something unusual happens. The marching column stops, not because of enemy fire, not because of exhaustion, because the road ahead is completely blocked. Not by tanks, not by soldiers, by trucks. Rows and rows of trucks, dozens of them parked along the frozen roadside, engines idling in the cold air. Their headlights glow through drifting snow like a line of mechanical eyes. An officer raises his hand. Mount up. The soldiers look at each other in confusion. Mount up? Only months earlier, Soviet infantry would have marched for hours, sometimes days, to reach the front lines. Transport vehicles were rare and usually reserved for officers or artillery. But now things are different. The soldiers climb into the back of the trucks, boots thudding against the steel beds. Canvas covers flap in the icy wind as the vehicles fill quickly with men carrying rifles, ammunition, and heavy winter coats. The driver shifts gears. The engine growls. And suddenly, the entire column is moving. Fast. Faster than infantry has ever moved across this frozen battlefield. The soldier sitting in the back, Private Ivan Petrov again, leans against the wooden side rail, gripping his rifle as the truck rattles over the icy road. Snow-covered trees flash past. Villages blur by in the distance. He glances toward the cab. The driver is grinning. "These American trucks," he shouts over the engine noise. "They don't like stopping." The men in the back laugh. But behind the humor lies a powerful truth. Something fundamental about the Red Army has changed. Before the arrival of the American trucks, Soviet operations were painfully slow. Entire offensives depended on marching soldiers and horse-drawn wagons. Artillery units often struggled to keep pace with advancing troops. Supply lines stretched thin across muddy roads and frozen fields. German commanders relied on that weakness. The Wehrmacht expected Soviet attacks to move slowly, predictably, but the arrival of hundreds of thousands of trucks changes the equation. Suddenly, the Red Army can move faster than anyone thought possible. Troops redeploy quickly across huge distances. Supplies reach the front line in hours instead of days. Artillery batteries relocate rapidly to support new attacks. And the trucks do something even more important. They give Soviet commanders flexibility. Now, instead of launching slow, grinding offensives, the Red Army can concentrate forces quickly at weak points in the German line. Strike hard, break through, then keep moving. 4 German units on the Eastern Front. This new mobility becomes a terrifying surprise. One of the men who understands this transformation best is Marshal Georgy Zhukov. By 1944, Zhukov is already legendary within the Soviet Union. He helped defend Moscow in 1941. He played a critical role in the Soviet victory at Stalingrad. And now he is preparing the Red Army for its next massive operation, an offensive so large it will change the course of the entire war. But to make it work, Zhukov needs something the Red Army has always lacked: speed. And for that, he needs trucks, thousands of them. Inside a command tent somewhere behind the front lines, Soviet officers lean over a large battlefield map. Colored pins mark German divisions, supply depots, artillery positions. The room smells of cigarette smoke and damp wool coats. Zhukov studies the map silently. Then he points toward a long section of the German front line in Belarus. "This," he says calmly, "is where we break them." The officers glance at each other. The German Army Group Center occupies that sector. It is one of the strongest formations in the entire Wehrmacht. Hundreds of thousands of German soldiers, heavy artillery, tank divisions. Breaking through here will require enormous force. But Zhukov isn't worried, because he knows something the Germans don't. Behind the Soviet lines, thousands of trucks are already gathering. Studebakers, Dodge cargo trucks, GMC transport vehicles, all delivered through the American Lend-Lease program, each one capable of hauling ammunition, artillery, or soldiers across the battlefield. And together, they will power one of the largest offensives in military history. Back on the frozen road, Ivan's truck slows as it approaches a new assembly point near the front. The engine finally quiets. Soldiers climb out into the snow, stretching stiff legs after the rough ride. Around them, the scale of the operation becomes clear. Trucks fill the entire valley, rows upon rows of vehicles stretching far into the distance. Engines rumble like distant thunder. Drivers refuel vehicles. Mechanics check engines. Officers move between the trucks, giving orders. It looks less like an army and more like an industrial machine preparing to move. Ivan turns slowly, staring at the endless rows of vehicles. He whispers to the soldier beside him, "How many trucks are there?" The man shrugs. "Enough." Ivan looks back toward the front line where German forces wait behind defensive positions. The Germans think they understand how the Red Army fights. Slow, heavy, predictable. They have no idea what is coming, because when the next offensive begins, these trucks will carry Soviet soldiers forward faster than the German army can react. Entire fronts will collapse. Cities will fall in days. And German commanders will soon face a terrifying realization. The Red Army they thought they knew doesn't exist anymore. Something far more mobile and far more dangerous has taken place. And the trucks waiting behind the front line are about to prove it. June 22, 1944, 4 a.m. The forests of Belarus tremble in the darkness. For a moment, everything is silent. German soldiers of Army Group Center stand watch along their trenches and bunkers. The Eastern Front has been quiet for days. Patrols report nothing unusual. Some officers believe the Soviets are exhausted after months of fighting. They are wrong. Suddenly, the night explodes. Thousands of Soviet artillery guns fire at once. The sound is overwhelming, an earth-shaking roar that rolls across the forests like a tidal wave. Shells scream through the air and crash into German positions with terrifying precision. Trenches collapse. Communication lines vanish. Entire bunkers disappear in pillars of dirt and fire. German soldiers scramble for cover as the bombardment continues minute after minute. Inside one command bunker, a German officer grips a field telephone. "Where is this attack coming from?" he shouts. The answer arrives quickly. Everywhere. The offensive now unfolding is called Operation Bagration. It is named after Prince Pyotr Bagration, a Russian general who fought against Napoleon in 1812. And it is enormous. More than 2 million Soviet soldiers are preparing to smash through German defenses. Over 6,000 tanks and self-propelled guns wait behind the front lines. Nearly 30,000 artillery pieces have already begun tearing the German positions apart. But behind all of that power lies something even more important: mobility. Hidden in the forests behind the advancing Soviet armies are thousands upon thousands of trucks, Studebakers, Dodges, GMC transports, engines already running, waiting. As the artillery barrage finally begins to slow, Soviet infantry surge forward through the smoke. German defenders fight desperately, but the attack comes from multiple directions at once. Entire sectors of the front line begin collapsing. Within hours, Soviet tank units push through the shattered defenses and drive deep into the German rear areas. But tanks alone cannot sustain an offensive this large. They need fuel, ammunition, infantry support, and that's where the trucks come in. Along a dirt road behind the advancing front, engines roar to life. Hundreds of trucks begin moving at once. Their headlights cut through clouds of dust and smoke as they race forward toward newly captured territory. Drivers shift gears aggressively, pushing their vehicles across rough ground and broken roads. In the back of the trucks sit infantry units ready to reinforce breakthroughs. Other trucks haul artillery. Others carry fuel drums. Others transport rocket launchers, the deadly Katyusha batteries that Soviet soldiers call Stalin's organs. Many of those Katyusha launchers are mounted directly on the back of American Studebaker US6 trucks. The rockets fire. The trucks move again. Fire. Move. Fire again. The mobility transforms the battlefield. German commanders quickly realize something is terribly wrong. Reports begin flooding into headquarters. Soviet units are appearing far behind expected positions. Entire German divisions are being surrounded. Roads once thought safe are suddenly filled with Soviet troops. Inside a command post near Minsk, German officers stare anxiously at maps covered with red arrows. One general mutters in disbelief, "How are they moving so fast?" For years, German strategy relied on one assumption. The Red Army was slow, predictable, unable to exploit breakthroughs quickly. But now Soviet forces are advancing at incredible speed, sometimes 50 kilometers in a single day. It feels less like a traditional offensive and more like a tidal wave. Behind the front lines, Private Ivan Petrov clings to the side of his truck as it bounces violently across a damaged road. German aircraft drone somewhere overhead, but the convoy keeps moving. Stopping is not an option. The truck suddenly slows as it reaches a ruined village recently captured from German forces. Smoke rises from shattered buildings. Burned-out vehicles line the road. But the Soviet advance continues forward without pause. The driver leans out the window. "See," he shouts. The trucks keep the war moving. Ivan looks behind them. The road is filled with vehicles stretching far into the distance. An endless convoy of engines and wheels feeding the Soviet advance. He begins to understand something. These trucks are not just transportation. They are the bloodstream of the offensive. Without them, the attack would slow. With them, it becomes unstoppable. Over the next weeks, the scale of Operation Bagration becomes clear. German defenses collapse across Belarus. Entire corps are surrounded and destroyed. Cities fall rapidly. Vitebsk, Orsha, Bobruisk, then finally, Minsk. When Soviet forces capture the city in early July, more than 100,000 German soldiers are trapped in massive encirclements. Army Group Center, once considered one of the strongest German formations on the Eastern Front, is shattered. It is one of the worst defeats in German military history. And as German survivors retreat westward in chaos, they begin noticing something strange. Everywhere they look, Soviet trucks, hundreds of them, thousands, moving troops, moving artillery, moving the war itself. Some German officers begin asking a disturbing question. Where are all these vehicles coming from? Because they know Soviet industry. They know how many trucks the Soviet Union produced before the war. And these numbers, they simply don't make sense. The answer lies thousands of kilometers away, in American factories, in shipyards, in cargo convoys crossing deadly oceans. And by the time German commanders fully understand what is happening, it is already too late, because the trucks powering the Soviet advance are about to carry the Red Army all the way to Germany itself. December 18, 1944. Studebaker Factory, South Bend, Indiana, United States. The factory floor shakes with the sound of machinery. Steel presses slam down with thunderous force. Sparks burst into the air as welding torches flash along assembly lines stretching across a building so large it feels like its own city. Workers move quickly between rows of half-finished trucks. Men, women, teenagers barely out of school. Many of them had never built military equipment before the war. A few years earlier, some worked in farms or small-town shops. Now they stand beside massive industrial machines, turning raw steel into weapons of war. One worker wipes grease from his hands and watches as another Studebaker US6 truck rolls forward along the line. Its engine is installed, its cargo bed mounted. A mechanic turns the ignition. The engine roars to life. Another truck finished. Another vehicle ready for war. But this truck isn't heading to an American unit. Most of them aren't. Instead, they will travel thousands of kilometers to a place many of the workers have never seen. The Eastern Front. Back in the Soviet Union, the Red Army continues pushing west after the success of Operation Bagration. Columns of trucks roar along muddy roads, carrying ammunition, fuel, and fresh troops toward the front lines. Private Ivan Petrov sits in the back of one of those trucks again, wrapped in a thick winter coat as snow drifts across the road. The truck rumbles steadily through the cold. Ivan taps the metal side panel and laughs. "You know," he says to the driver, "this American truck might survive the entire war." The driver grins. "It probably will." By now, Soviet soldiers know these vehicles well. The Studebaker US6 has become almost legendary among Red Army drivers. It starts reliably even in brutal winter conditions. Its powerful engine can pull heavy artillery pieces across deep mud, and its suspension handles terrible roads better than many Soviet-built vehicles. Soviet mechanics even begin modifying them. Some trucks are fitted with fuel tanks for long-distance supply runs. Others are converted into mobile repair workshops. But one of the most famous uses of the Studebaker comes from something far more terrifying: rocket artillery. Along a forest road near the front, a convoy of Studebaker trucks suddenly stops. Soldiers jump down from the cargo beds and begin preparing launch rails mounted on the back of the vehicles. Each rail holds rows of unguided rockets. These are BM-13 Katyusha rocket launchers. German soldiers fear them more than almost any other Soviet weapon. When fired in large numbers, Katyushas unleash a deafening storm of rockets that shriek through the sky before crashing into enemy positions with devastating explosions. But Katyushas have one weakness. After firing, they must move quickly. Enemy artillery will target their position within minutes. That's why mobility is everything. And that's where the Studebaker trucks prove perfect. The launchers fire. Rockets scream into the sky. Within seconds, the trucks start their engines and speed away before German counterfire can arrive. Without these trucks, the rocket units would be far slower and far more vulnerable. But with them, they become deadly hit-and-run weapons. The scale of American industrial production continues to grow throughout the war. Between 1941 and 1945, the United States produces staggering amounts of military equipment. More than 300,000 aircraft, over 80,000 tanks, and millions of vehicles. Under the Lend-Lease program, enormous quantities of that equipment are sent to Allied nations fighting Germany and Japan. The Soviet Union receives vast shipments of supplies, food, fuel, railway locomotives, aircraft like the Bell P-39 Aerocobra, flown successfully by Soviet ace Alexander Pokushkin. But trucks remain one of the most important contributions. More than 400,000 vehicles eventually reach Soviet forces, and a huge portion of them are Studebakers. By the later stages of the war, many Soviet offensives rely almost entirely on American-built transportation. Entire supply networks run on these vehicles. Even Soviet commanders acknowledge their importance. Years later, Marshal Georgy Zhukov would openly admit something remarkable. Without the trucks supplied through Lend-Lease, the Red Army's ability to move quickly across the vast Eastern Front would have been far more limited. The trucks did not win the war alone, but they made victory possible faster. By early 1945, the Red Army is pushing toward the borders of Germany itself. Snow-covered roads across Poland and Eastern Europe fill with long convoys of Soviet vehicles. Tanks roll forward, artillery follows, and behind them, trucks. Thousands of trucks. Ivan's unit rides inside one of them again as they approach another frontline assembly area. The driver slows the vehicle. Ahead of them stretches something Ivan has now seen many times before: a massive convoy. Row after row of transport vehicles stretching across the horizon. Some carry troops, some carry ammunition, some haul artillery pieces toward the next battle. Ivan shakes his head slowly. He remembers the early years of the war, when Soviet soldiers marched for days on foot, when supplies arrived slowly, when victory seemed almost impossible. Now everything feels different. The Red Army moves like a machine, fast, relentless, powered by engines from factories on the other side of the world. And soon those engines will carry Soviet forces to the final battlefield of the war. A city that has already become a symbol of Nazi power. A city that the Red Army is now racing toward. Berlin, April 16, 1945, 3 a.m. The banks of the Oder River, eastern Germany. A cold wind sweeps across the dark fields. Thousands of Soviet soldiers crouch silently behind their positions, rifles clutched in gloved hands. Ahead of them, barely visible through the night, lies the final defensive line protecting the heart of Nazi Germany, the Seelow Heights. Beyond those ridges sits the ultimate prize of the war in Europe, Berlin. For weeks, Soviet forces have been gathering here in overwhelming numbers. Tanks, artillery, infantry, millions of soldiers preparing for the final assault against Hitler's crumbling Reich. But behind the front line, hidden in forests and villages along muddy roads, something else waits. Engines. Thousands of them. Long convoys of transport trucks stretch across the countryside. Some are Soviet-built. Many are not. Their metal sides carry a familiar name, Studebaker. Private Ivan Petrov sits inside one of those trucks again, his back pressed against the wooden sideboard. The vehicle vibrates beneath him as the engine idles in the darkness. Around him, dozens of other trucks wait in formation. Their drivers smoke cigarettes, staring silently toward the distant flashes of artillery lighting the horizon. Ivan peers over the edge of the cargo bed. He can see tanks lined up across the fields, columns of artillery guns, rows of Katyusha launchers mounted on trucks like his. All of it ready, all of it waiting. Then, suddenly, the night erupts. More than 9,000 Soviet artillery guns open fire at once. The ground shakes violently beneath the trucks. Shells scream overhead toward German defenses on the Seelow Heights. The sky flashes orange as explosions ripple across the distant ridges. The final battle for Berlin has begun, but the soldiers inside the trucks do not move yet. Their moment will come later, because the trucks have a different role. They are not here to fight the battle. They are here to keep it moving. As the hours pass, Soviet infantry and tanks push slowly toward the German defensive lines. The fighting is brutal. German forces, though weakened, still resist fiercely. Machine guns and anti-tank guns fire from trenches and bunkers along the heights. Progress is slow, but eventually cracks begin to appear in the German defenses. And when those cracks appear, the trucks move. Engines roar to life across the dark countryside. Convoys surge forward along muddy roads toward newly captured positions. Drivers push their vehicles hard, headlights bouncing across broken terrain. In the back of Ivan's truck, soldiers brace themselves as the vehicle speeds forward. The driver shouts back over the noise, "Hold on." The truck lurches over a crater left by artillery fire. Ahead of them, Soviet tanks have already broken through the first German lines. Now infantry must follow quickly to secure the ground. Without trucks, that movement would take hours, maybe longer, but now it takes minutes. The vehicle skids to a stop near a shattered village recently captured by Soviet forces. "Out," the driver shouts. Soldiers jump from the truck and move quickly toward the front. The truck barely pauses before turning around and racing back for another load. Again, and again, and again. This is how the final advance toward Berlin unfolds. Not just tanks and artillery pushing forward, but waves of trucks carrying the Red Army deeper into Germany. Fuel trucks keep the tanks moving. Ammunition trucks feed the artillery. Transport trucks deliver fresh infantry units to exploit every breakthrough. The system works like a giant machine, every part moving together. And many of those parts were built thousands of kilometers away. By late April, Soviet forces finally reached the outskirts of Berlin itself. The city burns under constant artillery bombardment. Buildings collapse into streets choked with rubble. Fighting erupts block by block as Soviet soldiers push into the shattered capital of Nazi Germany. Ivan's unit arrives on the edge of the city in the back of the same battered Studebaker truck. The driver stops the vehicle beside a line of ruined buildings. He taps the steering wheel affectionately. "Well," he says quietly, "we made it." Ivan climbs down from the truck and looks toward the city. Black smoke rises above the skyline. The war that began years earlier with devastating German invasions is now ending here, in the heart of Germany itself. and the trucks that carried him across half of Europe are still running, still moving, still feeding the war machine that will soon bring the conflict to an end. On May 2nd, 1945, Soviet forces capture Berlin. 6 days later, Germany surrenders. The war in Europe is over. But long after the guns fall silent, many Soviet soldiers will remember something unusual about the final years of the war. The trucks, the endless convoys, the strange American name painted on their metal doors. Vehicles built in distant factories by workers who would never see the battlefields of Europe. Yet somehow, those machines became part of the Red Army's journey across the continent, from the frozen roads of Russia all the way to Berlin. And for many soldiers who fought that long war, the memory remained unforgettable. Because in the middle of the Eastern Front, where survival often depended on speed, supply, and movement, those trucks were everywhere. Yendi.